The vast chamber of the Galactic Council was a sight designed to humble any newcomer. A dome of shimmering, self-repairing crystal arced overhead, showing a curated view of swirling nebulas and tranquil starfields. The air hummed softly with the energy of translation fields and dampening fields that kept the atmosphere, perfectly tailored for dozens of different species. In the center, on a raised dais of polished black stone, sat the counselors. Their forms were varied, some insectoid, some mammalian, some gaseous forms contained in shimmering suits, but their posture was uniformly one of absolute, unquestioned authority. At the lowest level of the chamber, standing on a simple metallic disc, were the two human representatives. Jin stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He was a man of average height, his dark hair neatly trimmed, his simple gray suit stark against the opulence around him. Beside him, Mina watched the council with calm, dark eyes. She offered no smile, no nervous gesture. They had been waiting for 43 standard minutes. It was a petty power play, and they both knew it. Finally, Counselor Vylar of the Terran Empire stirred. His species was vaguely humanoid, but with violet skin and a crown of sensory tendrils that now waved in mild irritation. The Council will now hear the petition from the human delegation of Sol 3, he intoned, his voice amplified to fill the space. He did not look at them. You have appealed the technology embargo and resource sanctions placed upon your world. State your case. Be brief. Jin took a small step forward. The translation device around his neck glowed softly. Counselors, for 5 standard cycles, Earth has complied with every Galactic Accord's requirement for a pre-FTL, species discovered to be in possession of precursor-level technology. We submitted our neural augmentation research for review, as requested. The Council's finding that the technology is too dangerous for a psychologically unstable species to hold is not based on scientific review, but on prejudice. A murmur, like the rustle of dry leaves, went through the chamber. Another counselor, a being of interlocking crystalline plates named K-Rex-X, chimed in with a voice like grinding glass. Prejudice is a strong word, delegate. Your history is a litany of conflict. Your own planet bears the scars of your emotional volatility. The great filter for your species seems to be yourselves. This technology, which links mind to machine, in your hands, could become a weapon of horrific scale. Mina spoke now, her voice clear and even. Our history also shows adaptation, cooperation, and resilience. The neural link was developed to heal, not harm. To restore sight to the blind, to allow paralyzed limbs to move, to let minds crippled by isolation connect again. You have seen the medical data? We have seen the potential, Valère snapped, his tendrils stiffening. A healed soldier is still a soldier. A connected mind can be a hive mind. Your species clings to the concept of individual will, which is nothing more than chaotic unpredictability. The Council cannot risk a chaotic species gaining the tools to reach the stars properly. You are a danger to the peaceful order we have maintained for 1,000 generations. Jin felt the old, cold anger begin to simmer in his gut, but he let none of it reach his face. He had trained for this moment for years. So the sanction stands? You will continue to block our access to the galactic data stream, to trade, to medical advancements you freely give others? You will leave millions of our people to die of diseases you could cure with a thought, all because you fear what we might do? It is not fear. It is prudence, said a third counselor, a floating gelatinous orb that pulsed with soft light. You will be protected from yourselves. In a few more centuries, perhaps, if you evolve beyond your baser instincts, the Council may reconsider. The condescension was so thick it felt like a physical weight. Mina's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. You take our greatest achievement, call it a threat, and sentence us to stagnation. You offer us a cage and call it protection. Valère finally looked down at them. His large, black eyes held no empathy, only a cold, analytical disdain. Your alternative is what? War? You have a few primitive fission-powered ships that could not scratch the hull of a single Terran patrol vessel. Your pleas are emotional. Your arguments are based on a sense of entitlement you have not earned. The Council's decision is final. The embargo is total. Any attempt to bypass it will be met with orbital bombardment of your industrial centers. You are dismissed. The finality in his voice echoed. This was it. The end of diplomacy. Jin looked at Mina. A silent communication passed between them, honed by a decade of partnership. It was time. Jin did not plead. He did not get angry. He simply looked up, meeting Valère's eyes directly. Counselor, you mistake our purpose here today. We did not come to beg. A flicker of something annoyance? Curiosity? Crossed Valère's features. Oh? Then why are you wasting the Council's time? We came to deliver a message, Mina said, her voice now carrying a new, steel-like quality that seemed to absorb the ambient hum of the chamber. A final message, as required under Section 12, Subsection 8 of the Accords, the right to declare intent. Craze chimed nervously. Intent for what? Jin answered. You have declared Earth a threat and an outlaw. You have chosen to oppress rather than guide. You believe your technology, your power, your centuries of dominance make you untouchable. You believe that because we are new, we are weak. You believe that because we feel, we are foolish. He paused, letting the words hang. This was your last mistake. Earth will respond. Not with pleas. Not with the weapons you expect. But we will respond. And when we do, you will understand the flaw in your logic. Valère let out a sound that was probably a laugh. It was harsh and mocking. A threat. From a species that has not yet mastered clean orbital fusion. What profound response will you muster? More emotional speeches? Rockets that cannot leave your atmosphere? Jin ignored him. He reached into his suit pocket. Every guard in the chamber stiffened, weapons humming to life. He moved slowly, pulling out a simple, old-fashioned data chip, no larger than his thumbnail. He held it up. This contains every formal objection, every scientific rebuttal, every legal challenge we have filed over the past 5 cycles. You never read them. You never listened. He bent down and placed the chip on the edge of the metallic disc. We leave our words with you. Our actions will speak next. He straightened. Without another word, he turned. Mina turned with him. Together, they began walking toward the great arched exit of the chamber, their footsteps silent on the smooth floor behind them. Chaos erupted. Valère stood, his tendrils quivering. You dare turn your back on the Council? This act of disrespect will be noted. Your punishment will be... Jin did not look back. As he and Mina passed through the energy barrier of the doorway, out of the Council chamber, and into the bland utilitarian hallway of the station, he let out a slow, controlled breath. His heart was hammering against his ribs. Mina's hand brushed his, a brief, solid point of contact. They walked in silence to the docking bay, where their small, unarmed diplomatic shuttle awaited. Once inside, the hatch sealed with a hiss. Only then, in the privacy of their own craft, did Jin move to the command console. His fingers flew over the interface, inputting a complex 64-character code. A simple text-only prompt appeared on the screen. Ready for orders. Jin typed a single, pre-agreed phrase, the final signal that diplomacy was dead. The message was untraceable, piggybacking on the Council's own emergency bands. A hidden data ghost in the system. Operation Get Down. Execute. He leaned back in the chair. On the view screen, the colossal, beautiful, An arrogant station of the Galactic Council began to recede as their shuttle pulled away. Heading for the jump point back to Earth, Mina joined him. Staring at the shrinking symbol of a galaxy's tyranny, "Do you think they'll even remember what we said in an hour?" She asked quietly. Jin watched the station until it was a speck of light among countless others. "No," he said, his voice soft but certain. "They won't remember our words. But very soon, they will never forget our silence." The Council's laughter did not follow Jin and Mina back to Earth. It was, instead, replaced by a deep, focused silence. The Galactic Embassy on Luna was a quiet place now. The few remaining alien aides had left. The humans who worked there moved with a grim purpose. There were no grand speeches, no military parades. The world's governments, for once, were not arguing. They were waiting. In a room buried deep under the Taurus Mountains, two people stared at a wall of light. On it scrolled lines of alien code, the foundational architecture of the Galactic Council's technology. Day, an engineer with tired eyes and ink stains on his fingers, had not slept in 2 days. Beside him, Hana, a biologist with a calm and methodical mind, sipped cold tea. "They think in straight lines," Day said, pointing at a complex data flow diagram. "Their logic is hierarchical. A commands B, B commands C. It is efficient. It is also fragile." Hana nodded. "Like a single-celled organism. Powerful, but with no immune system. It has never encountered a different pattern of thought." This was the heart of it. The Council's greatest strength was its uniformity. Every hyperdrive, every shield generator, every food synthesizer across thousands of worlds was built on the same core code. It was licensed, patented, locked. This control was the real source of the Council's power, not their ships, but their technology. They had made the galaxy dependent. The human response, Operation Gedang, was not a bomb. It was a key. "Our neural nets don't think in straight lines," Hana said, bringing up a scan of a human brain. Firing neurons lit up the image in a chaotic, beautiful web. "We think in webs, in connections, in jumps. The Council systems have no defense against a thought pattern that looks like noise." Day's team had spent 5 years in secret, doing the one thing the Council had forbidden, studying a captured Council data core not with their computers, but with their own augmented minds. They had jacked in, letting their human perception dance through the alien logic. They did not try to break it. They learned its melody. And now they had composed a counter-melody. The weapon was a virus. But it did not destroy. It did not corrupt files or shut down systems. It was far more subversive. "It's a rewrite," they explained to a small group of leaders on a secure feed. Their faces on the monitor were pale and serious. "A gentle one. It finds the Council's proprietary locks, the code that says this machine only works for those who pay, and it edits them. It changes a single command. It turns restrict into share." Hana took over. "It uses a biological model. Think of it like a benign bacteria that lives in your gut. It doesn't hurt you. It just outcompetes the harmful bacteria. Our code will outcompete their restrictive protocols. It will spread through their data streams, the galactic network they use for everything, and it will simply make their technology open source." One of the leaders on screen, an old general, frowned. "Open source?" "Free," Jin said, his face appearing in another window. He and Mina were back on Earth, in a different secure facility. The food synthesizer on a poor mining world that only works if you pay your tribute to the Council? It will now work for anyone. The medical printer that refuses to cure a fever unless you have the correct license? It will now print the cure. The energy core that powers a city but can be shut off by a Council tax collector? It will now run independently. There was a long silence. Mina finally spoke. "We are not attacking their ships. We are attacking their wallet and their authority." The plan was terrifying in its simplicity. The launch point was not a warship, but a small, silent probe that had been sitting dormant near the galactic data stream relay for years. A forgotten piece of human junk. They sent the command. The probe woke up. It did not fire a laser. It emitted a single compressed pulse of data, a shimmering packet of light no larger than a grain of sand. It shot into the relay, the main artery of galactic communication and control. The Council's filters scanned it. They saw nothing threatening. It was not a weapon signature. It was not a virus in any form they recognized. It was, their systems reported, low-priority background data. They let it pass. The pulse exploded, not physically, but digitally. It unfolded like a flower, releasing Hana's beautiful, chaotic web of code. It attached itself to data packets traveling to every corner of the Council's space. It hit trading outposts, mining colonies, shipyards, and great capital worlds. On a dusty planet called Caver, a Terran overseer scowled as the food synthesizer in the workers' quarter beeped and reset. The screen flickered. The credit balance, insufficient message vanished. A simple, universal menu appeared. The hungry workers watched. One, daring, tapped the command for a basic nutrient paste. The machine hummed. A full portion slid out. Then another. The machine did not stop. On a hospital ship orbiting a gas giant, a Lan-Pi doctor gasped as the surgical suite she was locked out of, her species could not afford the license, suddenly chimed, and its doors slid open. The controls were now labeled in plain, simple galactic standard. The proprietary lock was gone. On the capital world of the Terran Empire, in the Grand Energy Distribution Center, 1,000 warning lights flashed. The central control console went blank for 3 seconds. When it rebooted, a simple, unfamiliar icon appeared on the screen. An unlocked padlock. The chief engineer tried to reroute power to the strategic defense grid. The system refused. It was no longer taking hierarchical commands. It was asking for community input. The change was not violent. Lights did not go out. In most places, they stayed on. Engines did not die. They kept running. But the control was gone. The Council's ability to turn the galaxy's lights on and off, to grant or deny food and medicine, had just been silently, gently severed. Back in the mountain room, Bay watched the cascade on his screen. Tiny dots representing infected systems began to bloom across a star map, first one, then 10, then thousands, spreading at the speed of light along the data streams. "It's working," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Hana watched the biological models, seeing the virus replicate and adapt just as she had designed. They can't stop it. To fight it, they would have to understand a human mind. They would have to think in a web. On the screen, Jin allowed himself a small, cold smile. The Council was waiting for missiles, for the roar of primitive engines, for the flash of plasma against shields. They were prepared for a brutal, direct attack. They were not prepared for a gift. The first confused. Reports began to trickle into the Council's communication hub. They spoke not of explosions, but of malfunctioning markets. Not of invasions, but of inexplicable generosity from machines. The councilors, beginning their evening meal in their luxurious chambers, had no idea yet that the ground beneath their empire had just turned to sand. Their revenge was not a strike, but a shrug. Humanity had not declared war, that it had declared everything free. And the galaxy, for the first time in millennia, took a deep, unshackled breath. The silence in the Galactic Council's emergency chamber was not peaceful. It was the quiet of a machine that had stopped working. The usual soft hum of the crystal dome was gone. The lights were at half power, running on backup systems. Counselor Vilaire stared at the main display, where frantic reports from 100 worlds scrolled too fast to read. His sensory tendrils lay flat against his skull. "Explain it again," he demanded, his voice cutting through the murky air. In simple terms, the chief technologist, a being whose form was mostly hovering screens and thin limbs, gestured helplessly. "Counselor, the primary systems are intact, but they are no longer listening." "Nonsense. Machines listen to commands." "Our commands. Not anymore. A foreign code has inserted itself into the foundational layer of the operating protocol. It has rewritten the core permissions. It is like the door to a house is still there, but the lock now answers to everyone." Another counselor, the gelatinous orb named Olex, pulsed with anxiety. "Can we purge it? A system-wide reboot?" The technologist made a sound like a sigh. "A reboot would require the centralized command module. The command module is part of the system that is infected. It would be like asking a sick brain to perform surgery on itself. The code is symbiotic. It does not damage the host. It lives within it, changing only one thing: ownership." Valère slammed a fist on the console. "Ownership? Who owns it now?" "That is the problem, Counselor. The code declares that the systems are now open property, common knowledge. The patents, the license locks, the access restrictions, they are being systematically ignored by the hardware itself." A new report flashed, this one from the Terran homeworld's energy grid. The visual showed a public square where citizens were gathering around public terminals. The terminals, once used only for paying utility taxes, were now displaying the entire schematic of the planetary power grid. Real-time data. Control functions. A child could, theoretically, reroute power from a weapons factory to a residential district. The security override was gone. "This is an attack." Valère roared. "A declaration of war. Trace the source." The technologist's screens flickered. "We have tried. The code has no singular source. It is propagating through the data streams we built. It is in the relays, the coms, the trade routes. It is everywhere at once. Its signature? It is unlike any coding logic we have on record. It is nonlinear. It is chaotic." Krex, the crystalline being, chimed in, a note of fear in the sound. "The humans, their delegation, they spoke of a response." Valère froze. He thought of the two small, calm figures standing in this very chamber. Their lack of fear. Their final, quiet warning. A cold dread began to seep into his mind. He had expected rage, fire, the clumsy violence of a young species. Not this. This was a ghost in a machine. This was a poison that did not kill, but liberated. "Get me the human delegation. Now." His order was a snarl dot. The communication tech worked frantically. The main holoscreen shimmered, and after a long moment, it resolved into an image. It was not the Grand Council chamber on Luna. It appeared to be a simple, plain room on Earth. Mina sat at a bare metal desk. She wore a simple black shirt. Behind her, through a window, a green landscape was visible, dappled with sunlight. The normalcy of it was insulting. "Counselor Valar," she said, her tone polite, empty of triumph. "What have you done?" He hissed, his tendrils quivering with rage. "We have responded, as we said we would." Her dark eyes were calm. "You have launched a cowardly attack on galactic infrastructure. You have violated 1,000 accords." Mina tilted her head slightly. "Have we? Our analysis shows no damaged infrastructure, no loss of life, no interruption to essential services. In fact, reports indicate that food production on marginalized worlds has increased by 300% in the last 6 hours. Medical facilities are operating at full capacity for the first time in generations. Where is the attack? Valère was speechless for a moment. That was the horrifying genius of it. They were using his own metrics against him. No explosions, no casualties. By the Council's own narrow definitions of warfare, nothing had happened. You have stolen intellectual property. You have broken the locks. We have broken the locks, Mina agreed calmly. The locks you used to starve worlds that could not pay. The locks you used to deny medicine. The locks you used to keep entire species in the dark so you could sell them candles. You called us volatile. You called us dangerous. But what is more dangerous than a gatekeeper who hoards the key to survival? Olex pulsed weakly. This will cause chaos, anarchy. Systems need control. Systems need fairness, a new voice said. Jin stepped into view behind Mina, placing a hand on her shoulder. He looked at the counselors with an expression of cool assessment. You built your order on enforced dependency. We have simply updated the terms of service. The technology you claim to protect from us is now protecting everyone from you. Valère felt the foundation of his world crumbling. He thought of the wealth, the power, the absolute control that was leaching away by the second. The Terran Empire's wealth was not in resources, but in licenses, in being the ones who sold the solution to every problem. Now, the solutions were giving themselves away for free. You will reverse this. He demanded, but the demand sounded hollow, even to him. We cannot, Jin said. The code is adaptive. It learns. If you try to purge it, it will hide. If you build a new system, it will find a way in. It is built on a pattern your logic cannot map. It is built on human thought. You cannot cage an idea, Counselor. Mina leaned forward slightly. You asked for our brutality. You expected bombs and bloodshed. That is the brutality you understand. So you did not see this coming. Our brutality is the truth, delivered without hatred. The truth that your empire is a business. And today, we have made your products free. On a secondary screen, a live feed from a mining colony on the edge of Council space appeared. A crowd of different species, workers, miners, laborers were cheering. They were not rioting. They were celebrating. A communal food synthesizer was producing feast-level meals. Children were eating. An old being was being helped toward a now-unlocked medical scanner. It was a scene of joy. It was the funeral of the Council's authority, K-Rix-X, shattered. Not metaphorically. A crack ripped through his crystalline form with a sound like a gunshot. He did not die, but he slumped, his light dimming. The sight sent a wave of pure terror through the remaining counselors. Valère could only stare at the humans on the screen, at their quiet, unyielding faces. He had no threat to make. Orbital bombardment was useless. Their world didn't run on the systems he could break anymore. Sanctions were meaningless. They had just sanctioned the entire galaxy. What do you want? The question was a whisper, Jin, and Mina exchanged a look. It was not a look of victory. It was a look of solemn purpose. We want nothing from you, Jin said. The conversation is no longer with you. It is with them? He gestured to the feed of the celebrating miners. You are no longer the gatekeepers. You are just people in a room. Try to keep up. The transmission ended. The screen went dark, leaving the counselors in the half-light of their crippled chamber. The reports of collapsing markets, of joyous uprisings, of a galaxy waking up, continued to scroll silently. Valère did not read them. He simply stared at the place where the human faces had been. For the first time in his long life, he felt the chilling touch of true obsolescence. They had not fought him. They had made him irrelevant. And in the crushing silence, he had absolutely nothing to say. The Terran Imperial fleet was a breathtaking sight. 50 sleek, dagger-shaped warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a perfect formation just outside the orbit of Mars. Their hulls were polished silver, reflecting the distant sun. Their main energy cannons glowed with a soft, deadly blue light. On the lead ship, the Executor of Wills, Admiral Qatar felt a flicker of grim satisfaction. The humans' digital trick would end now. They would see the difference between playing with code and facing real, physical power. The plan was simple, brutal, and traditional. They would establish a blockade. They would disable Earth's pathetic orbital defenses. They would broadcast a surrender ultimatum. And if the humans refused, they would launch a single, precise kinetic strike on a major city demonstration. The shock and awe would break their spirit. The Council's order was clear. Make an example. Open a channel to Earth's primary defense network. Qatar commanded, his voice echoing in the quiet bridge. Channel open, Admiral. Qatar drew himself up. People of Earth, this is Admiral Qatar of the Terran Imperial Fleet. You have committed an act of technological terrorism against the Galactic Council. Power down your networks and submit to Council authority immediately. Disable all orbital and planetary defenses. You have 1 hour to comply, or we will bring decisive force to... A soft, pleasant chime sounded across the bridge communication system. On the main view screen, the image of Earth flickered and was replaced by a human face. It was a man with a calm expression and close-cropped hair. He wore a simple black uniform with no insignia. Admiral Qatar, the man said. I am Captain Tay. Welcome to the Sol System. Please be advised that your weapons are powered down and your targeting systems are offline. Qatar blinked. He looked at his tactical officer. The officer was frantically tapping at his console, his face confused. Report. Qatar snapped. Sir, the weapon systems, they are not responding. The console says, command authority not recognized. The ships are reading as friendly. On the screen, Captain Tay gave a small, polite smile. You see, Admiral, your ships now run on updated software. The hostile action protocols have been deprecated. Your vessels currently recognize all human ships and stations as friendly, non-combatant assets. You cannot fire on us. A cold sweat broke out on Qatar's neck. Impossible. Our systems are isolated, hardened. They were connected to the Galactic data stream for navigation updates 14 hours ago. Tay explained, his voice calm, almost conversational. The update was mandatory. It contained some additional code. Your ships are perfectly fine. They just have new priorities. Override. Manual override. Qatar shouted. The tactical officer tried. A physical lever, meant for emergencies, was pulled. Nothing happened. The system gently suggested he consult the community guideline for weapons use. Meanwhile, on Tay's bridge, which was not on a warship, but on a large, unarmed deep space monitoring station, the mood was focused but quiet. Tay watched the Terran fleet on his sensor display. The enemy ships were just sitting there, adrift. Their shields were down. Their engines were idling. Begin Phase 2, Tay said softly. From behind the moon, from the Lagrange points, from the orbits of other planets, human ships began to move. They were not impressive. They were boxy, utilitarian freighters, retrofitted mining rigs, and old orbital transfer craft. They had no visible weapons. They moved slowly, deliberately, forming a loose, non-threatening ring around the majestic Terran fleet. On the Executor of Wills, alarms sounded. Admiral, multiple human vessels are approaching. They are on intercept courses. Destroy them. Qatar roared. We cannot, sir. The system will not allow a target lock. It keeps classifying them as civilian aid vessels. One of the human ships, a bulky freighter with faded paint, drifted closer. It came to a stop less than a kilometer from the Terran flagship's bridge. A hatch opened. No weapons emerged. Instead, a large, standard galactic emergency broadcast antenna extended. Captain Tay's face appeared on every screen in the Terran fleet, and his signal was now being piggybacked across the galaxy using the Terran's own powerful transmitters. People of the galaxy, Tay began, his image clear and steady. You are receiving this broadcast because the ships sent to punish Earth have been peacefully contained. They are not harmed. They are simply disarmed. Across 1,000 worlds, in market squares and communal hubs, where the old restrictive screens now showed free feeds, beings looked up. The Galactic Council told you Earth was a threat. They said we were volatile. They sent this fleet to burn our cities, to frighten you into obedience. Tay paused, letting the image of the helpless, glittering Terran warships fill the screen behind him. But we will not fight them. There will be no fire today, no death, because this is not about conquering them. It is about freeing you. He gestured, and the view changed to the day-to-day and Hana had prepared. Simple, clear animations showed how the Council's patent locks worked, how they artificially created scarcity, how they forced species to beg for technology they had once owned themselves. The food, the medicine, the power, it was always yours. The Council just put a lock on it. We have removed the lock. That is all we have done. The Terran fleet cannot fire because their own weapons now see that truth. To attack us would be to attack the idea of sharing. And that is an idea you cannot kill with a plasma bolt. Back on the Terran ridge, Admiral Katar was screaming into a dead comms line, trying to reach the Council. The human's words were being broadcast using his ship's power. He was a prisoner in his own command chair, forced to host his own humiliation. Jin's face appeared next on the same broadcast. He stood in the same plain room as before. Counselor Villaire, you heard our message. You chose to answer with warships. You still believe power is about who holds the biggest gun. Look at your guns now. They are silent. You have no sanctions left to impose, no threats left to make. Your authority was a shadow, and we have simply turned on the light. He looked directly into the feed, his gaze seeming to reach across the light years. The galaxy is not a thing to be ruled. It is a community to be built. You are no longer its architects. You are relics. And we do not smash relics. We walk past them. Into the future we will build with everyone else. The broadcast ended. The human freighter retracted its antenna and quietly drifted back to its position in the ring. Admiral Katar finally stopped shouting. He slumped in his chair, staring at the harmless, ugly human vessels surrounding his magnificent fleet. They had not even bothered to take his ships as prizes. They were just keeping him company. A guard of honor for a defeated idea. On Earth, Captain Tay watched his sensors. The Terran ships were powering down their engines completely, entering a passive standby mode. Their commanders had given up. There was nothing to fight. You could not wage war on a philosophy that had already disabled your sword. Tay allowed himself a small sigh. It was not a sigh of victory, but of relief. The first and only shot fired in the war for the galaxy had been a data packet, and it had been enough. He turned to his communications officer. Send a message to Admiral Katar. Offer humanitarian aid if their life support runs low. And tell him he can go home whenever he's ready. The message was sent. There was no reply. There didn't need to be. The lesson was written in the stars, clear for all to see. The most powerful fleet in the sector had been defeated not by a stronger force, but by a better idea. And it had surrendered without a sound. The great hall of the Galactic Council was empty. Truly empty. The crystalline dome showed the stars, but no one looked at them. The polished black dais where the councilors had sat for centuries was just a piece of stone. The translation fields were off. The only sound was the whisper of recycling air. Councillor Vilair stood alone in the center of the chamber. He had ordered everyone else to leave. He needed to feel the silence. In the past few days, the reports had stopped coming. Not because the situation was fixed, but because there was no longer a central authority to report to. The Terran fleet had returned, not in triumph, but in shame, slipping back to home ports without fanfare. The other member species of the Council had simply walked away. There were no resignations, no dramatic exits. They just stopped answering calls. They were too busy at home, dealing with their own people who were now asking very loud, very pointed questions about where all the free technology had been hiding. The door to the chamber hissed open. Vilair did not turn. He knew who it was. The footsteps were light, measured. Two sets Jin and Mina walked into the hall. They wore the same simple clothes as before. They carried nothing. They stopped a few meters from him. For a long time, no one spoke. The human pair simply waited, letting the void of the chamber press in. Finally, Vilair turned. His violet skin seemed dull, his sensory tendrils limp. He looked old. "You have come to gloat," he said, his voice flat. "To stand where we sat and claim your throne." Jin shook his head slowly. "No. Then why are you here? To offer us mercy? To let us be advisors in your new order?" A spark of bitter anger flashed in his black eyes. "We are not building a new order," Mina said. Her voice was quiet, but carried perfectly in the stillness. "We are not the Council." Vilair stared at her, confused. This was the one outcome his mind could not map. Conquest was a logical process. You defeat, you occupy, you rule. Then what are you doing? "We are going home," Jin said. "Our work is done. The locks are broken. The truth is loose. What happens next is not for us to dictate. It is for every species, every world, every community to decide for themselves." Vilair's mind reeled. "That is chaos, anarchy. Systems will collapse. There will be war over resources." "Maybe," Mina conceded. "Or maybe there will be cooperation. For the first time, the playing field is level. You made the rules of the game, and you always made sure you won. We have ended the game. Now people get to just live." Jin took a step closer. "You asked us, in our last transmission, what we wanted. We want nothing from you. We never did. We only wanted you to stop taking from everyone else. You have stopped. Not because you are good, but because you are incapable. So our purpose here is finished." Vilair looked from Jin to Mina, searching for deception, for hidden ambition. He found none. Only a profound and weary certainty. It was this, more than anything else, that broke him. They were not even interested in punishing him. He was beneath their notice. He was a problem that had already been solved. Why? He whispered, the word escaping him. "Why did you not simply destroy us? It would have been easier, cleaner." Mina's expression soft, not with pity, but with something like understanding. "Because we are human. We fight to build, not to destroy. Your revenge was your own decay. We just showed you the mirror. You saw the cracks yourselves." From a small pouch on her belt, Mina produced a simple data chip. It was a match to the one Jin had left on the floor days before. She walked to the base of the black dais and placed it on the first step. "This contains the complete technical schematics for the neural augmentation technology you feared, the medical protocols, the communication frameworks, everything. No locks, no patents. It is yours. It is everyone's. Use it to heal. Or don't. The choice is no longer ours. And it was never yours alone to make. Valère could only stare at the small, glinting object. The ultimate treasure, the thing that had started it all, placed on the ground like an afterthought. It was the final proof of their terrifying, brutal philosophy. They gave their greatest weapon away to their former jailers. Jin gave a last, slow look around the grand, empty hall. This place was built to control. It served its purpose. Now its purpose is over. What you do with it, or without it, is up to you. Together, they turned and walked back toward the arched doorway. Their footsteps echoed faintly, then were swallowed by the silence. Wait! Valère's voice was a strangled croak. They paused, glancing back. What? What is your plan now? What will Earth do? Jin offered a small, genuine smile. It held no malice, only a quiet anticipation. We will go back to our lives. Our engineers, like Day and Hana, will keep learning. Our doctors will keep healing. Our captains, like Tae, will keep watching the stars. We will talk with our new neighbors as equals. We will share stories and food and ideas. We will build things, together or separately. We will live. It is a very simple plan. You are welcome to try it. Then they were gone. The great door sealed behind them, leaving Valère utterly alone with the echo of their words and the chip on the step. He did not move for a long time. He looked at the empty seats of power. He looked at the chip. The human virus had not killed his body, or his ships, or his cities. It had killed the very idea that had given his life meaning, the right to rule. He was not a defeated emperor. He was just a man in a very large, very quiet room. On the view screens that still had power, a new kind of transmission was beginning to appear. Not from a central authority, but from 100 different worlds. The Lan-Ki were broadcasting their first open-source energy grid designs. The miners of Caver were sharing improved atmospheric processing techniques. A community of a dozen different species in a remote system was announcing a collaborative project to build a deep space garden, inviting anyone with interest to contribute. It was messy. It was loud. It was chaotic. It was alive. Valère finally understood the brutal, beautiful revenge of Earth. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had given it back. And in doing so, they had made the old guardians of order speechless, not with fear, but with the overwhelming, humbling, deafening sound of a galaxy finding its own voice at last. He walked slowly to the door, leaving the chip on the step, leaving the empty chairs behind. He had nothing to say. There was too much everywhere to listen to.